Millionaire CEO said, "Stop crying, my dear," to a stranger's child, until he saw her mother and was shocked. Morning traffic moved like a living current outside Meridian Crown Tower. Coffee cups, phone calls, hurried shoes. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going. No one noticed the little girl sitting alone on the wide marble steps except the wind nudging the ribbon in her hair. She hugged a faded backpack to her chest, trying to be brave while tears slid down her cheeks. People walked past. Some slowed for half a second, then kept going, as if sadness required more time than they could spare. A black car stopped near the entrance. The door opened, and Taylor Jackson stepped out, composed, precise, carrying the quiet authority that made strangers straighten their posture without knowing why. His assistant's voice echoed from his phone. "Your investors are already waiting upstairs." "I'll be there," he replied, ending the call. He moved toward the doors, then stopped. The sound of crying broke through the rhythm of the street. Taylor wasn't known for hesitation. Schedules defined his days and efficiency defined his choices. Yet something about the girl's small voice made him slow down. He watched for a moment, as if deciding whether kindness fit into a calendar. The girl sniffled, wiping her nose with her sleeve. Taylor exhaled quietly and stepped closer, lowering himself to her level but leaving a respectful distance. "Hey," he said, his voice calm. "Rough morning?" She nodded without looking up. "My mommy told me to wait here," she whispered, "but she's taking forever." Taylor glanced toward the building entrance, scanning faces that passed by. "She'll come back," he said gently. "Sometimes adults just run late." The girl tilted her head, studying him as if he were a puzzle. "You look like you don't wait for anyone," she said. A faint smile touched his lips. "That might be true." Taylor rested his elbows on his knees, his tone soft but slightly distant. The voice of someone more comfortable, solving problems than sitting inside emotions. "Stop crying, my dear," he said. "She'll come back soon. Moms always do." The word surprised even him. He wasn't used to comforting children, yet they felt natural in the moment. The girl wiped her cheeks again. "What's your name?" he asked. "Pamela. I'm Taylor." She looked at his watch, then at his polished shoes. "You're important, huh?" "I guess people think so." "Then why are you here with me?" she asked. He paused, searching for an answer that made sense even to himself. "Because," he said finally, "everyone deserves someone to sit with them when they're upset." Pamela stared at him for a long second, not impressed by his suit or his reputation, only curious about the quiet sadness hiding behind his calm face. "You look sad too," she said softly. The words landed harder than he expected. Taylor blinked, caught off guard. No investor had ever spoken to him like that. No headline ever had. "I'm fine," he answered automatically, then stopped, realizing how empty the sentence sounded. Pamela shook her head. "My mom says people who say I'm fine are usually not fine." A small laugh escaped him before he could stop it. "Your mom sounds wise." "She is," Pamela said proudly. For a moment the noise of the street faded. Taylor felt something unfamiliar. Not pressure, not ambition, but a quiet pull toward a memory he couldn't quite reach. He stood slowly, straightening his jacket. "Well, Pamela, I should—" The glass doors behind him swung open. Footsteps rushed across the floor. "Pamela." A woman hurried outside, eyes searching until they landed on the little girl. Relief flooded her face as she dropped to her knees and pulled Pamela into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. The interview ran longer than I thought." Pamela laughed through leftover tears. "I waited like you said." Taylor stepped back, giving them space, until the woman looked up. Time seemed to hold its breath. "Taylor," she said quietly. He froze. Janice, 7 years disappeared in a single glance. The same warm eyes, the same calm strength. Only now she looked older, steadier, someone who had lived through storms without losing her softness. "I didn't know this was your building," she said, surprise mixing with something deeper. "I didn't know you were coming here," he replied. Pamela looked between them. "You know Mr. Suit?" Janice smiled faintly. "A long time ago." The city continued moving around them, but Taylor felt rooted to the steps, caught between who he used to be and who he had become. Sometimes life doesn't send warnings. One ordinary morning, one small voice, one unexpected reunion, and suddenly everything you thought was finished returns to stand right in front of you. Have you ever run into someone who changed your story when you least expected it? Taylor built a world where success filled every hour, yet standing there beside Janice and Pamela, he felt a question rise that no business deal had ever asked him. What if achievement wasn't the same as happiness? This wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of a choice he never planned to make, a path that would challenge everything he believed about ambition, family, and the meaning of winning. Before we continue, welcome to Mr. Williams' Storytime. If you enjoy emotional stories that make you think while keeping your heart warm, take a second to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? Now, let's go back to the moment Taylor Jackson realized that the quiet life he built might finally be about to change. Inside Meridian Crown Tower, sound behaved differently. Conversations softened the moment Taylor Jackson entered the lobby, as if the building itself adjusted its volume to match his calm presence. The reception desk staff greeted him with respectful smiles. "Good morning, Mr. Jackson." He nodded once, never unfriendly, never overly warm, a man who moved with quiet purpose. Elevator doors opened before he reached them. Someone had already pressed the button. Small gestures like that followed him everywhere, reminders of how much space his reputation occupied. As the elevator climbed, screens reflected the city below, bridges stretching across the water, ferries gliding in steady paths. Taylor glanced at his reflection only briefly before focusing on his phone again. Numbers, schedules, negotiations, safe territory. Feelings were never part of the agenda. On the executive floor, assistants exchanged updates in low voices. Meeting at 10 moved to conference room 2, new investor file uploaded. Taylor walked through the hallway, acknowledging everyone with brief eye contact. People respected him not because he demanded attention, but because he rarely wasted words. In the main office, glass walls framed a wide view of downtown. Awards lined one shelf, not arranged to impress visitors, just placed where they fit. His partner Marcus leaned against a desk, arms folded. "You're early," Marcus said. "I prefer starting before problems arrive," Taylor replied. Marcus smirked. "You say that like problems don't chase you anyway." Taylor's lips curved slightly. Humor existed in his world, just quiet and brief. Meetings passed in efficient rhythm. Charts shifted across screens, voices discussed projections, and decisions came quickly. Taylor listened more than he spoke. When he did, the room focused instantly. "We move forward," he said during one discussion, "but we don't rush growth that sacrifices stability." A few heads nodded. His calm confidence carried more weight than dramatic speeches ever could. Yet between conversations, his gaze drifted toward the window. Far below, people moved freely, laughing, walking without agendas. For a second, he watched a father lifting his daughter onto his shoulders near a food cart. He looked away almost immediately, returning to numbers. By midday, his assistant placed a neatly prepared meal on his desk. "You should eat before the next call," she reminded him. "I will," he said. The food stayed untouched while emails filled his screen. When Marcus walked in again an hour later, he pointed at the tray. "You know that's not decoration, right?" Taylor glanced at it as if seeing it for the first time. "I forgot." Marcus shook his head, half amused. "One day you'll realize life isn't just deadlines." Night arrived without ceremony. The city lights turned the glass walls into mirrors, reflecting a man alone at his desk long after most employees had left. When Taylor finally returned home, the penthouse greeted him with perfect stillness. The space was elegant, soft lighting, clean lines, art chosen with care. Yet nothing felt lived in. No shoes left by the door, no voices drifting from another room. He set his keys down, loosened his tie, and walked toward the balcony. Below, traffic hummed steadily. A musician played somewhere in the distance, notes carried upward by the night air. Taylor rested his hands on the railing, watching without really seeing. His laptop opened again within minutes. Emails filled the silence, turning solitude into structure. A message from Marcus popped up. "You missed the team dinner tonight." Taylor typed a quick reply. "Next time." He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, he considered adding more, an explanation, maybe even an apology, but closed the chat instead. Work was simpler than conversation, predictable, controlled. He leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting toward a photo frame tucked near the edge of a shelf. It held an old picture turned slightly away, its details hidden unless someone looked closely. Taylor didn't reach for it. Not tonight. Morning arrived too quickly. Back in the lobby the next day, employees greeted him the same way. Respectful, careful, slightly distant. A junior analyst nearly dropped a stack of folders when Taylor passed by. "Sorry, sir," the analyst said quickly. "No harm done," Taylor replied, steady and calm. Yet as he walked toward the elevator, something felt different. Maybe it was the echo of Pamela's small voice from the day before. Maybe it was the way Janice's eyes had held both surprise and familiarity. For the first time in a long while, Taylor found himself distracted, not by business decisions, but by a memory that refused to stay in the past. He stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut behind him. The silence returned, only now it didn't feel quite the same. Taylor tried to begin the morning the way he always did, focused, efficient, untouched by yesterday's interruptions. Yet as he stepped through the lobby, His attention drifted toward the marble steps outside. They were empty now. No small backpack. No quiet voice asking questions that didn't belong in his structured world. He slowed near the glass doors without meaning to. His assistant approached with a tablet. "Your 9:30 call has been moved earlier. Should I? Give me 5 minutes," he said gently. She blinked in surprise but nodded. Taylor stepped outside. The city carried on as usual, buses exhaling at the curb, commuters adjusting scarves, the smell of roasted coffee drifting from a nearby cart. Everything looked ordinary, except he wasn't moving at the same pace anymore. He glanced at the spot where Pamela had sat. For a brief second, he heard her voice again in his mind. "You look sad too." He exhaled slowly, almost amused by how a child's observation had followed him longer than any boardroom argument. Later that morning, Taylor reviewed reports in his office, but numbers refused to hold his focus. Marcus walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've read the same page 3 times, Marcus said, setting a cup on the desk. "I'm thinking," Taylor replied. "That's dangerous," Marcus teased lightly. "What's on your mind?" Taylor hesitated, then shrugged. "I met someone outside yesterday." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspiciously personal." "A child was waiting for her mother," Taylor said simply. "It reminded me of something." Marcus studied him for a moment. "You are not usually the reflective type." "People change," Taylor said quietly, though he wasn't sure if he believed it yet. Around noon, the lobby filled with new arrivals. Designers, consultants, and applicants moved through security with hopeful expressions. Taylor exited the elevator just as a familiar laugh reached his ears. Pamela stood near the reception desk, swinging her backpack from side to side. "Mr. Suit," she called when she spotted him. He couldn't help smiling. "I thought we agreed I deserved a real name." She pretended to think deeply. Maybe." Janice stood beside her, holding a folder. She looked more composed than the day before, though a hint of nervous energy lingered in her posture. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," he replied, matching her calm tone. "I had to come back to drop off some additional work samples," she explained. "They asked for revisions." Taylor nodded. "Do you have a few minutes?" Her eyes searched his face, trying to read his intentions. "Sure." They moved toward a quieter seating area near the windows. Pamela climbed onto a chair, drawing circles on a notepad she found in her backpack. Taylor gestured toward the folder. "May I?" Janice handed it to him. He flipped through the designs, soft textures, thoughtful layouts, spaces that felt welcoming rather than cold. Each page carried a warmth that contrasted sharply with the sleek environment of the tower. "You always paid attention to how people feel inside a space," he said. She smiled faintly. "Some habits stay." He looked up. "Your work stands out." "Thank you," she said, her voice steady but touched with relief. Pamela leaned closer. "Mom stayed up late finishing those," she announced proudly. Janice laughed under her breath. "I told you not to tell everyone." Taylor's expression softened. "Dedication shows." An announcement echoed softly through the lobby, calling Janice upstairs for a follow-up discussion. She stood, smoothing her jacket. "That's me." Pamela hopped down from the chair. "Can I stay here again?" Janice hesitated, glancing at Taylor. He nodded gently. "I'll make sure she's okay. Only if it's not too much trouble," Janice said. "It isn't," he assured her. As she walked toward the elevators, Taylor noticed how determined she looked, the same strength she carried years ago, now shaped by time and responsibility. Pamela swung her legs from the chair. "Mom's nervous," she whispered. "She's prepared," Taylor replied. "You always talk like a teacher," she said with a grin. "And you always ask honest questions," he answered. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Pamela drew small houses and stick figures, occasionally showing him her progress. "Is that us?" he asked when she held up a picture. She nodded. "You look serious in real life, but I made you smiling here." He studied the drawing longer than he expected. "Thank you," he said quietly. She tilted her head again, studying him like before. "You smile more today, do I?" "Yeah." "Maybe my mom makes you less stiff." He chuckled softly. "You might be right." The elevator doors opened, and Janice returned, relief shining in her eyes. "They want me to come back next week," she said, excitement slipping into her voice. "That's good news," Taylor replied. Pamela jumped up. "See? I told you." Janice laughed, then turned to Taylor. "Thank you for keeping her company. It was my pleasure." For a brief moment, the three of them stood together, an unexpected kind of balance forming between past and present. Janice adjusted Pamela's backpack. "We should go." As they walked toward the exit, Pamela waved dramatically. "Bye, Taylor." The doors closed behind them, leaving him standing in the lobby with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years, anticipation. Back upstairs, Taylor leaned against his desk, staring at the city skyline. Janice's laughter echoed faintly in his thoughts. So did the memory of a rainy afternoon long ago, a crowded cafe, a spilled drink, and a woman who taught him that life didn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. He closed his laptop slowly. Some stories never truly end. They wait quietly until the right moment to begin again. 7 years earlier, Taylor Jackson wasn't a name people recognized in boardrooms. He was simply a young man with a laptop, too many ideas, and not enough sleep. The cafe near the waterfront buzzed with quiet conversations and the steady rhythm of cups meeting saucers. Taylor sat near the window, typing rapidly while diagrams filled his notebook. He reached for his drink without looking and knocked it over. Coffee spread across the table, dripping toward the edge. "Oh no," he muttered, grabbing napkins. A laugh sounded beside him, warm, unguarded. "Relax," a woman said, sliding extra napkins across the table. "Spilled coffee isn't a life crisis." Taylor glanced up. Janice. Her smile carried an ease that made strangers feel less self-conscious. She wasn't dressed to impress anyone, just comfortable, confident in a quiet way. "Thank you," he said, slightly embarrassed. She tilted her head toward his notebook. "Big ideas?" "Maybe," he replied. "Or maybe just messy ones." She laughed again. "Messy ideas are usually the interesting ones." That was how it started, not with grand declarations, but with a simple conversation that lasted longer than either of them planned. Days turned into weeks of unexpected meetings. Sometimes they planned them. Other times they simply ran into each other at the same cafe, as if the city quietly nudged them together. They walked along the waterfront after sunset, sharing thoughts about work, creativity, and the strange pressure to succeed before truly living. "You talk about the future like it's already written," Janice said one evening. Taylor shrugged. "Planning helps me feel in control. And what happens when life ignores your plans?" He paused, considering the question. "Then I work harder." She smiled gently. "Or you learn to breathe." Her presence softened the sharp edges of his ambition. He found himself laughing more, leaving his laptop closed longer, noticing details he once ignored. Street musicians, art displays, the calm of simply sitting beside someone without needing to fill every silence. Their connection grew naturally. Late-night takeout dinners replaced solitary work sessions. Janice listened to his ideas with genuine curiosity, asking questions no investor ever thought to ask. "You don't just want to make money," she said once. "You want to build something that matters." He looked surprised. "How did you figure that out?" "You talk about people more than profit," she replied. "You just hide it behind numbers." Taylor began to imagine a future that included more than business milestones. Small apartments filled with laughter, shared mornings, quiet evenings that didn't feel empty. Janice encouraged him, not by pushing him to slow down, but by reminding him that success meant little if he lost himself along the way. Then everything changed. A major investment opportunity arrived, and Taylor's world shifted overnight. Meetings stretched late into the night. Phone calls interrupted dinners. Plans were postponed again and again. At first, Janice understood. "You're excited," she said, watching him pace during a call. "I get it. I just need a little more time," he promised. "Once this deal is done, things will settle." But new opportunities followed the first. His calendar filled faster than he could manage. Messages went unanswered. Even when they sat together, his attention drifted toward his phone. One evening at a small restaurant, she waited nearly an hour before he arrived. "I'm sorry," he said, breathless. "The meeting ran long." She smiled softly, though disappointment flickered in her eyes. "You've said that a lot lately." He reached for her hand. "Just one more milestone." She nodded, trying to believe him. Months later, Janice stood in the doorway of his tiny office, the same space that once held laughter and shared dreams. "You look exhausted," she said gently. "It's temporary," he replied, barely looking up from his screen. She walked closer. "Taylor, I don't need perfect plans or big promises. I just need you to be here." He paused, unsure how to respond. His mind stayed trapped in deadlines and projections. "I'm doing this for our future," he said. "Our future needs you now," she whispered. Silence filled the room. He didn't know how to balance love and ambition. Instead of choosing, he kept working. Janice watched him for a long moment, sadness mixed with understanding. "I hope you find what you're chasing," she said softly. When she turned to leave, he assumed she would come back once things calmed down. She didn't. The days that followed felt strangely quiet. Taylor told himself it was temporary, that success required sacrifice, that relationships could wait. His company grew rapidly. Investors praised him. Opportunities multiplied. Yet some nights, when the city lights faded and his apartment felt too large, he remembered the way Janice used to laugh at his serious expressions. He never reached out. Not because he didn't care, but because he convinced himself she deserved someone who could give her time he didn't have. The distance between them stretched into years. Standing by his office window now, Taylor closed his eyes briefly. The memory of the cafe, the waterfront walks, and the quiet goodbye settled heavily in his chest. He thought about Pamela's smile, about Janice's calm strength when she walked into the lobby again. Life had brought them back into the same space, not as dreamers chasing possibilities, but as people shaped by choices they couldn't undo. He straightened his jacket and returned to his desk. Outside, the city moved forward. Inside, something long buried had finally begun to stir again. Later that afternoon, Taylor sat alone in his office with Janice's design portfolio open across his desk. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the city beyond the glass. He studied each page slowly. Her work wasn't loud or flashy. Instead, it carried warmth, curved lines, welcoming colors, thoughtful spaces designed for people rather than status. Waiting areas that felt calm instead of intimidating, offices that encouraged conversation instead of distance. He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Marcus stepped inside without knocking, holding a tablet. "You've been staring at that folder like it holds the meaning of life." Taylor gave a small smile. "It holds good work." Marcus glanced at the designs. "So, is she getting the role?" Taylor didn't answer immediately. His gaze lingered on one sketch, a shared workspace built around natural light and comfortable seating. "She understands how people feel in a space," he said quietly. "That's rare." Marcus crossed his arms. "You're the boss. Just don't let history complicate your decision." Taylor closed the folder gently. "I'm not. I'm choosing quality." He pressed the intercom. "Can you schedule a call with the design team?" Moments later, several senior staff members gathered around the conference table. Taylor placed the portfolio in front of them. "We're expanding the interior development project. I want Janice Harris added to the team." One of the managers flipped through the pages. "Her style is softer than our usual direction." "That's why we need it," Taylor replied. "Our spaces should feel human, not distant." Another colleague nodded. She could bring balance to the brand. Taylor watched their reactions carefully, making sure the choice stood on its own merit. When the meeting ended, he felt a quiet certainty, not just about hiring her, but about allowing something different into the company's culture. A week later, the lobby felt brighter than usual. Janice stepped inside carrying a small tote bag, her posture calm but her eyes searching for familiar faces. Pamela stood beside her, excitedly pointing at the high ceilings. "Mom, it's huge," she whispered. Taylor walked toward them from the elevators. "You made it," he said. Janice smiled. "First day nerves. You'll do fine," he replied. Pamela waved enthusiastically. "Hi, Mr. Suit," he chuckled. "Still working on that nickname, huh?" She tapped her chin dramatically. "Okay, Uncle Taylor." Janice laughed, covering her mouth in surprise. "Pamela." "It's okay," he said, amused. "I think I've been promoted." The tension between past and present softened into something easier, not rushed, just comfortable. Taylor introduced Janice to the team, keeping the tone professional yet warm. "This is Janice Harris," he said. "She'll be leading the human-centered design phase." Her coworkers greeted her with curiosity and respect. Within minutes, she was discussing layouts, sketching ideas, and asking thoughtful questions that shifted the room's energy. Taylor watched quietly from the side. Marcus nudged him. "You look proud." "I respect her work," Taylor replied. "Sure," Marcus said with a knowing smile. "Just her work." Taylor ignored the teasing, though a faint smile stayed on his face. Across the room, Pamela sat at a small table coloring, occasionally glancing up to see her mother confidently presenting ideas. The atmosphere felt lighter than usual, conversations flowing more naturally, laughter appearing between discussions. After the meeting, Janice walked with Taylor toward the elevators. "Thank you," she said softly. "I know you didn't have to approve this personally. I wanted the right person for the project," he replied. She looked at him carefully. "You've changed." "So have you," he said. Pamela tugged on his sleeve. "Uncle Taylor, do you always work this much?" He pretended to think. "I'm learning not to." Janice's smile held a quiet warmth, the kind that came from seeing growth rather than promises. Sometimes life gives second chances in unexpected ways, not by rewriting the past, but by offering a new moment to choose differently. Have you ever reconnected with someone you thought you'd never see again? Did it feel awkward or strangely familiar? If this story is touching you so far, take a second to like the video and share it with someone who enjoys meaningful storytelling. And let me know in the comments, would you give someone from your past another chance if life brought them back into your world? Now, let's continue. because the small moments that followed would begin to change Taylor in ways even he didn't expect. Within days, the atmosphere inside Meridian Crown Tower began to shift in small but noticeable ways. Janice transformed a quiet corner of the design floor into a collaborative space filled with sketches and fabric samples. Employees who once rushed between meetings started pausing there, discussing ideas instead of simply exchanging instructions. Taylor walked through the area one morning and noticed two junior designers laughing while adjusting a model layout. "That's new," Marcus said beside him. "People work better when they feel comfortable," Taylor replied, watching Janice guide a team member through a design adjustment with patience. She glanced up and caught his eye, offering a brief smile before returning to her work. The moment felt easy, no pressure, just shared understanding. Pamela began visiting after school, her presence turning the office into a warmer place without disrupting professionalism. She sat at a small desk near Janice, drawing colorful buildings and showing them to anyone who passed by. One afternoon, she wandered into Taylor's office holding a sketchbook. "Uncle Taylor, look, I made your building happier." He turned the page to see bright windows and tiny stick figures waving from balconies. "I like it," he said honestly. "You gave it personality." She grinned. "Buildings shouldn't look lonely." Her words stayed with him long after she left the room. As weeks passed, Taylor found himself leaving work earlier than usual. On days when Janice needed to stay late finishing plans, he walked Pamela to a nearby park. She ran toward the swings while he sat on a bench, watching parents talk and children laugh. "You don't check your phone much when you're here," Pamela observed one evening. "I'm practicing," he replied. "Practicing what?" "Being present." She nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. A soft breeze moved through the trees, carrying the sound of distant music from a street performer nearby. Taylor leaned back, realizing he hadn't felt this calm in years. Mornings began with short coffee breaks that stretched into deeper conversations. "You've been leaving earlier lately," she said. "I realized I don't have to stay until the lights turn off," he answered. She studied him thoughtfully. "That sounds like growth, or maybe I finally listened to advice I ignored before." She laughed softly. Better late than never. They talked about projects, Pamela's school stories, and small details of everyday life, the kind of conversations that didn't need grand meaning to feel important. One afternoon, Pamela ran toward him holding a hairbrush. "Mom says you should learn how to braid," she declared. Taylor looked genuinely uncertain. "I'm not sure I'm qualified." Janice watched from a nearby chair, amused. "Try," Pamela insisted, sitting patiently. His first attempt turned into a tangled mess, making both Pamela and Janice laugh. Okay, he said, raising his hands in surrender. "I need more training." Pamela grinned proudly. "You're getting better." The simple moment felt strangely meaningful, a reminder that perfection wasn't required to belong. Marcus noticed the difference before Taylor did. "You smile more," Marcus said during a meeting break. "Do I?" "Yeah. The office feels lighter, too." Taylor glanced toward the design floor where Janice spoke with a group of colleagues, her calm confidence drawing people in. "She's good for the team," he said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And for you?" Taylor didn't answer right away. Instead, he watched Pamela run past the hallway, laughing about something only she understood. "Maybe," he admitted quietly. Later that evening, Janice stood near the window reviewing a set of drawings when Taylor approached. "You've changed the mood of this place," he said. "I just encouraged people to talk to each other," she replied. "It's more than that," he added. "You remind us why we build things, for people." She looked at him carefully. "And you've changed too, how?" "You listen more," she said gently. "You used to rush every conversation." He considered her words, realizing she was right. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one, reflecting against the glass walls. Weeks passed with no dramatic events, only a series of small, meaningful interactions. Shared lunches replaced solitary meals. Team discussions felt less rigid. Taylor even joined a group brainstorming session without sitting at the head of the table. One evening, Pamela handed him another drawing, this time showing 3 figures standing together in front of a building. "That's our team," she said proudly. He studied the image, a quiet warmth settling in his chest. For the first time in years, success didn't feel like something he chased alone. It felt like something growing quietly around him, built from laughter, patience, and moments that didn't need to be perfect to matter. And without realizing it, Taylor Jackson, the man once followed by silence, had begun to fill his days with something far more meaningful. Most of the lights inside Meridian Crown Tower had dimmed for the evening, leaving only a soft glow along the design floor. Outside, the city moved at a slower pace, cars passing in steady lines, distant voices drifting upward from the street. Taylor stepped out of the elevator, surprised to see a single desk lamp still on near the windows. Janice stood there reviewing sketches spread across the table, her focus steady. "You always did your best work when everyone else went home," he said gently. She turned, smiling in recognition. Some habits never leave. He walked closer, noticing how the warm light softened the sharp edges of the office around her. "I thought you left hours ago," she added. "I did," he admitted. "But something told me to come back." They sat across from each other, coffee cups between them. For once, neither of them rushed to fill the silence. "How's the project feeling so far?" he asked. "Challenging," she said honestly, "but in a good way. People here care more than they let on." He nodded. "They respect you." Janice studied him for a moment. "And you? Do you still enjoy all of this?" He looked toward the city lights before answering. "I used to think achievement would solve everything. Turns out it only solved the problems that came with money. And the rest? They stayed," he said quietly. Her expression softened, not with pity but with understanding. Taylor leaned back in his chair, fingers loosely wrapped around his cup. "I thought success would fill empty spaces," he admitted. "Instead, it just made the silence bigger." Janice listened without interrupting. "That sounds lonely," she said. "It was," he replied. "Maybe it still is sometimes." She traced the edge of one of her sketches thoughtfully. "You always worked hard. I never doubted that. I just hoped you'd learn to rest too." "I'm trying," he said, slowly. The honesty between them felt different from years ago, calmer, less defensive, built on lessons neither of them expected to learn. A quiet pause settled before Taylor spoke again. "I wanted to ask about Pamela's father," he said carefully. Janice's gaze lowered for a moment, then returned to him. "He passed away a few years ago," she said gently. "He was kind. We cared about each other, but our paths were never meant to last forever." Taylor nodded, absorbing her words without judgment. "You've done an incredible job raising her," he said. "She teaches me as much as I teach her," Janice replied with a small smile. "Kids have a way of showing you what matters most." He thought about Pamela's drawings, her fearless honesty, the way she made even quiet rooms feel lighter. They moved toward the window, standing side by side as the skyline reflected across the glass. "I never expected to see you again," Taylor admitted. "Neither did I," she said. "Life has a strange sense of timing." He glanced at her, searching for the right words. "I don't want to rush anything or pretend the past didn't happen." "I wouldn't want that either," she said softly. Their shoulders brushed lightly, neither pulling away. The moment wasn't dramatic, just calm, steady, honest. Janice picked up one of her designs, showing him a layout centered around shared spaces. "I've been thinking about how environments can encourage people to connect," she explained. "Sometimes all it takes is a place that feels welcoming." Taylor studied the sketch. "You're building more than offices. I'm building spaces where people feel less alone," she said. He met her eyes. "You've always done that." She looked away briefly, touched by the sincerity in his voice. Silence settled again, not heavy, just thoughtful. Taylor rested his hands in his pockets. "I used to believe slowing down meant falling behind. And now?" she asked. "Now I think it might mean finally catching up with life." Janice smiled softly. They stood there for a while, watching the city move below them. No grand promises, no dramatic gestures. Just two people who had grown in different directions, finding a quiet place where their paths crossed again. As Taylor turned to leave, he paused near the door. "I'm glad you're here," he said. Janice nodded. "So am I." The office lights dimmed behind him as he walked toward the elevator, carrying a calm he hadn't felt in years. A sense that maybe, just maybe, the story he thought had ended was only beginning a new chapter. A few weeks later, Taylor stood outside a private dining lounge overlooking the city's waterfront. The company's investors gathered there occasionally, not for loud celebrations but for quiet discussions that shaped the future of the business. Janice adjusted the sleeve of her dress, glancing toward the entrance. "I still feel like I'm stepping into someone else's world," he offered a reassuring smile. "You belong anywhere you decide to stand." She took a breath, steadying herself. Pamela had stayed with a trusted neighbor for the evening, leaving Janice free to focus without distraction. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's do this." Inside, conversations paused briefly when Taylor entered. He greeted investors with polite nods, but something about him felt different tonight. Less distant, more grounded. Marcus approached with a grin. "You clean up well," he teased quietly. Taylor gestured toward Janice. "This is Janice Harris, leading our new design phase." The group welcomed her warmly. Instead of shrinking under attention, she spoke with calm confidence about how thoughtful spaces improve productivity and well-being. Her ideas sparked genuine interest, and soon the discussion shifted toward possibilities rather than profits alone. Taylor watched her speak, pride evident in the way he listened. Later, they moved toward a quieter corner, where soft music played in the background. Plates of food rested on a long table, untouched as conversations deepened. One investor turned to Taylor. "You seem more relaxed lately." Taylor smiled faintly. Perspective changes things. As the evening continued, he found himself laughing more easily, engaging in conversations that felt human instead of purely strategic. Marcus leaned close again. "You look happier." Taylor didn't deny it. After the main discussions ended, Taylor guided Janice toward a small outdoor balcony. The city lights stretched across the water, reflections shifting gently with the movement of passing boats. She rested her hands on the railing. "You've built something incredible here. It didn't feel complete before," he admitted. She turned to him. "And now? Now I'm starting to see the parts I missed," he said. A comfortable silence followed, filled with the distant hum of the city below. Taylor hesitated before reaching for her hand, slowly, giving her space to decide. Janice didn't pull away. Their fingers rested together, warm and steady. "I don't want to repeat old mistakes," he said quietly. "I know I pushed too hard before." She nodded, her expression calm. "We were both learning who we were." "I don't expect everything to change overnight," he added. "I just don't want to ignore what's still here." Her gaze softened. "Then let's take it one honest step at a time." The simplicity of the moment meant more than any grand declaration. When they returned inside, a few colleagues exchanged knowing smiles. The change in Taylor's demeanor was clear, not in dramatic gestures, but in the ease with which he moved through the room. He introduced Janice to a few more partners, listening carefully as she shared her vision for creating spaces that encouraged collaboration rather than competition. One of the investors nodded thoughtfully. "Your perspective brings something fresh to the company." Janice glanced at Taylor. "He gave me the chance." He shook his head slightly. "You earned it." As the evening drew to a close, Taylor stood near the window, watching the city glow under the night sky. Janice joined him, their shoulders nearly touching. "You've changed," she said softly. "So have you," he replied. He realized then that success no longer felt like a race he had to win alone. It felt like something shared, built through trust, patience, and the courage to slow down when it mattered. For the first time in years, he didn't rush toward the next deal or the next milestone. Instead, he stayed in the moment, holding her hand gently, knowing that the path ahead didn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. The morning after the investor evening, Taylor arrived at his office to find a sealed envelope waiting on his desk. His assistant stepped in shortly after. "New York called again," she said. "They're serious about the acquisition." He opened the folder slowly. The proposal offered expansion, influence, and a level of control over the market that most executives spent their entire careers chasing. Years ago, he would have signed without hesitation. Marcus leaned against the doorway. "That's the kind of offer people dream about." Taylor nodded but didn't respond right away. The numbers looked impressive, yet something about them felt distant, like a goal he had already outgrown. Throughout the day, discussions circled around the potential move. Advisors highlighted advantages, analysts predicted growth, and investors spoke about new horizons waiting beyond the city. Taylor listened carefully, but his thoughts drifted towards smaller moments instead. Pamela's drawings taped to the side of his office shelf, Janice laughing during a design meeting, the quiet calm he had felt lately. During a break, Marcus lowered his voice. "This could change everything." "It already has," Taylor said softly. Marcus studied him. "You're not as excited as I expected." "I used to measure success by how fast things grew," Taylor replied. "Now I'm wondering what growth costs." That evening, Taylor found Janice reviewing blueprints near the design floor. "You look like you're carrying something heavy," she said gently. He handed her the proposal. "They want me to sell controlling shares and relocate," he explained. "It's everything I used to want." She read quietly, then placed the papers down. "What do you want now?" she asked. He hesitated. "I'm not sure. Part of me feels proud, and another part feels like I'd be leaving something important behind." Janice didn't rush to give advice. Instead, she asked, "When you picture yourself a year from now, what feels real to you?" He looked around the office, the team working together, the space she helped transform. "I see this," he said. "Not just the company, the people." Her smile held quiet understanding. The next day, Pamela sat in Taylor's office coloring while Janice attended a meeting upstairs. She held up a drawing showing 3 figures standing near a building. "That's you, Mom, and me," she said. Taylor studied it, noticing how she placed the 3 of them close together. "You always draw us as a team," he said. "Because we are," she replied simply. He felt a warmth settle in his chest. After a moment, she added, "Mom smiles more when you're here." The words landed gently but firmly, the kind of truth only a child could say without hesitation. Taylor leaned back in his chair, realizing that the decision in front of him wasn't just about business anymore. Later that night, he walked alone along a quiet street near the waterfront. Lights reflected across the water, and distant music drifted from a small cafe nearby. He thought about the younger version of himself, the one who believed bigger opportunities always meant better outcomes. Now he understood that success wasn't only about reaching higher places. Sometimes it meant choosing where to stay. His phone buzzed with another message from the New York group asking for confirmation. He typed a short reply, "I'll give you my answer soon." Life doesn't always present clear right or wrong choices. Sometimes the hardest decisions come when both paths look successful, but only one feels meaningful. What would you choose if you had to decide between greater ambition and the people who make your life feel complete? If this part of the story makes you think, take a moment to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective helps keep stories like this alive and growing. And now, let's continue, because Taylor's next decision would redefine not only his future, but the way he understood success itself. The private conference room felt unusually quiet as Taylor stepped inside. A long table stretched across the center, lined with documents waiting to be signed. Representatives from the New York firm greeted him with confident smiles, certain the evening would end in agreement. "Taylor," one of them said warmly, extending a hand. "We're excited to finalize this partnership." He returned the handshake politely, taking his seat at the head of the table. Marcus sat nearby, watching closely. Glasses of water were placed in front of each attendee. The atmosphere held anticipation, not tense, just expectant. "This move positions you at the top of the market," another executive said. "You'll have access to resources beyond anything currently available." Taylor listened quietly, absorbing every word without interruption. As the conversation continued, his attention drifted for a brief second, not away from the discussion, but inward. He remembered Pamela's drawing resting on his desk, Janice standing by the window during late-night conversations, the calm he had felt walking through the office lately, hearing laughter where silence once ruled. Years ago, he would have seen this decision as obvious. Tonight felt different. The lead negotiator slid a pen across the table. "All that's left is your signature." Taylor rested his hand near the paper, his expression thoughtful. He took a slow breath before speaking. "I appreciate the offer," he said calmly, "and I respect what you've built." The room leaned in slightly. "But I'm not selling control of the company," he continued. "We'll grow, just not by giving up what makes this place meaningful." A quiet pause followed. No raised voices, no dramatic reactions, just surprise settling across the table. One executive cleared his throat. "Are you sure? Opportunities like this don't come often." Taylor nodded. "I know. That's why I considered it carefully. Growth matters to me, but so does balance." Marcus watched him with a small, proud smile. "Well," he said thoughtfully, "that's not the answer we expected, but it's one we can respect." Another added, "You're choosing independence. That takes confidence." Taylor inclined his head. "I believe in what we've built here." The tension faded, replaced by a sense of mutual understanding. Though the agreement would look different now, the conversation shifted toward collaboration rather than acquisition. For the first time in a long while, Taylor felt completely aligned with his own decision, not chasing validation, just standing firm in what felt right. When the meeting ended, Marcus caught up with him in the hallway. "I remember when you would sign without blinking," Marcus said. "So do I," Taylor replied with a quiet smile. "What changed?" He thought for a moment. "I realize success isn't only about reaching higher places. Sometimes it's about choosing where you already belong." Taylor chuckled softly. "Maybe I did." Outside the building, the evening air felt lighter than usual. Taylor paused on the steps, looking out at the city. Instead of wondering what he might lose by refusing the offer, he felt grateful for what remained. A company built with intention, a team that felt like family, and the chance to shape his life with purpose rather than pressure. He checked his phone and saw a message from Janice. "How did it go?" He typed back, "I chose to stay." Her reply came almost instantly. "I'm proud of you." Taylor slipped the phone into his pocket, a quiet smile forming as he stepped into the night. No longer running toward something distant, but walking confidently toward the life he had finally learned to value. Months later, morning light settled gently across Meridian Crown Tower. The city moved with its usual rhythm, people heading to work, conversations floating through the air, coffee cups warming cold hands. Taylor stood near the marble steps, holding 2 cups of coffee. Pamela ran ahead, her laughter echoing across the open space as she chased a paper airplane she had folded herself. Janice approached from behind him, adjusting her bag over her shoulder. "You're early again," she teased softly. "I like starting the day here," he replied. "It reminds me of how things changed." She accepted the coffee he offered, their fingers brushing briefly. Employees passing by greeted Taylor with easy smiles instead of careful distance. The atmosphere around him felt lighter, shaped by months of small decisions that had slowly transformed both him and the company. "You've made this place feel warmer," Janice said, watching the morning crowd. "We did," he corrected gently. She glanced at him, understanding the meaning behind that simple word. Pamela ran back toward them, holding a folded sheet of paper behind her back. "Close your eyes," she said excitedly. Taylor laughed. "Is this a surprise inspection?" "Yes," she declared. He played along, closing his eyes until she pressed the drawing into his hands. When he opened his eyes, he saw 3 figures standing together in front of the tower. One tall, one graceful, one small and energetic. Above them, Pamela had written in careful letters, "Our team." Taylor studied the drawing longer than she expected. "It's perfect," he said quietly. Janice placed a hand lightly on his arm. "She's been working on that all week." They walked toward the entrance together, moving at an unhurried pace. Inside, the design floor buzzed with collaboration, laughter, ideas, sketches pinned to boards. What once felt like a place of silent ambition now carried a sense of shared purpose. Marcus crossed their path, nodding toward Taylor. "You're late for once," Taylor shrugged. "I had important business outside." Marcus glanced at Pamela's drawing and smiled knowingly. "Looks like the best kind of business." Janice headed toward her team while Pamela followed, waving back at Taylor before disappearing into the hallway. Taylor returned to the marble steps alone for a moment, looking out over the city. The same streets, the same movement, yet everything felt different. The silence that once followed him no longer felt heavy. It felt calm, like a quiet space where he could finally breathe. Janice joined him again, leaning against the railing beside him. "You're thinking," she said. "I'm remembering," he replied. "The day I told a stranger's child to stop crying." She smiled softly. "And now I understand that moment changed me too." Their hands found each other naturally, no hesitation, no rush. Life has a way of bringing people back into our path when we're ready to see things differently. Sometimes the smallest encounters become the beginning of a new chapter, one built on patience, honesty, and the courage to slow down. If this story warmed your heart, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves meaningful stories, and subscribe to Mr. Williams Storytime for more journeys filled with emotion and inspiration. And before you go, tell me in the comments, what moment in this story stayed with you the most? Because for Taylor, it wasn't the deals or the headlines that changed his life. It was a small voice on a quiet morning, reminding him that success means more when you don't walk through it alone.